Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician, and activist. In this video, for spiritually helping other people, we're going to be talking about the journey of spiritual enlightenment. I'm going to explain the importance of spiritual enlightenment and why we all need to go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment is really the most important thing to discover in life. Spiritual enlightenment is basically when you overcome the self to discover no self, selflessness. When you go for a spiritual change, overcoming yourself and a spiritual transformation, finding who you truly are, knowing thyself. Spiritual enlightenment is very important in life. And, Jesus Christ and Buddha is talking about in Christianity, Buddhism. And it's important to realize that the spiritual enlightenment is what we need to discover. Now, if we go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment, we'll discover new things about ourselves and things that are very important to us. And all human beings need to go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment. It's very important when we do go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment that we understand that this is a journey, it's not a destination. You're always going to be learning new things about yourself on the journey. But it's important to realize with spiritual enlightenment that this can bring spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. And it could really mean the ending of suffering, pain, and adversity, and the ending of the self into the no self. So this becomes very important to discover in life. Um, Within my books, within my audios, within my podcasts, I've been trying to share basically how to overcome suffering, pain, and adversity, overthinking, negative thinking, ruminating, how to live a life what you truly are destined to live. Spiritual, faithful, truthful, purposeful, meaningful life, fulfilling life. So this video becomes very important to those people that want to go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment, find who they truly are as a human being, discover the no self and selflessness, and really go through the process of spiritual change, find spiritual enlightenment. Now, for me, I'm still young. I'm only 36. So I experienced my spiritual enlightenment when I was 24, when I lost everything in my life, my home and all of my possessions, became homeless. So that was my journey of spiritual enlightenment, spiritual, personal development, self-improvement, and learning about life and the complexities of life and challenges of life. It's so important that we all go on this spiritual journey. I went on the journey when I was 24, so I was very young when I discovered faith and spirituality. But for the viewers that are listening and the people that are watching, we can all go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment today. Just have to find the time, the patience, and the commitment and the dedication to want to change your life spiritually, become who we truly are destined to be. So I'm gonna just look at my phone because I have the process of spiritual enlightenment on my phone. I'm just gonna go through each process step by step in this video to help the viewers and the listeners, the people that are watching about spiritual enlightenment and the journey of spiritual enlightenment. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 stages to spiritual enlightenment. And each stage becomes very, very important on the journey. So let's begin. Stage one is the self. So the self is where we always start. So the self is your personality, your behavior, characteristics, your mentality, your morals, your values, your principles, and who you are as a person, your identity, right? So that's the self. And with the self, we're always going to be problems and challenges that we face with the self. So this becomes very, very important to learn and very, very important to understand. Self is full of corruption, destruction, pain, suffering, and adversity. So the self is a very hard thing for all human beings to live and to go through. But the self is where all the problems in life basically happen from. So this is why the spiritual enlightenment journey is so important. So stage two, suffering, pain, and adversity. Because of ourselves, because of the life that we live, the mistakes that we made, the wrong decisions, the wrong choices, and how we live our lives, which is not faithful or spiritual, we go through suffering, pain, and adversity. When we go through suffering, pain, and adversity, we're really having a difficult life and a challenging life. This is stage two. So, because of the self, this is why we go through suffering, pain, and adversity. So, it's so important in the spiritual enlightenment journey that we understand that it's the self is causing our suffering, pain, and adversity, and what we're going through as human beings. So, this is why millions of people are depressed, have anxiety, have stress, have disappointment, struggle, suffering, pain, and adversity because of the self. So the self is the problem. Self is the problem in life. When we live selfishly and do things that are not correct, we have suffering, pain, and adversity that we go through. So stage three, overcoming suffering, pain, and adversity. So to overcome suffering, pain, and adversity, first we must acknowledge the self. We must acknowledge that ourselves is causing our pain, our suffering, and adversity. So to overcome the self, we must go through a spiritual change. So the spiritual change becomes very important. That's the only way we can overcome ourselves and find spiritual enlightenment, spiritual freedom, spiritual liberation. So stage four, spiritual transformation. When we go through a process of spiritual change, we go through a process of spiritual transformation. The spiritual transformation is how we change the psyche and the psychological mind of our lives. And this is a change of the actual person themselves, the human being. So when we go through a spiritual transformation, we're changing ourselves as a human being completely. So our morals will change, our values will change, our beliefs will change, our principles will change, our personality, our characteristic, our behavior, our way of living, our mentality, our personality. All of these things will change once we go through the process of spiritual change, which is spiritual transformation, which helps to overcome suffering, pain, and adversity. And slowly, within the process and the journey, gets you to the point of spiritual enlightenment. So stage five, spiritually helping other people. Now, once we've gone through the spiritual change, spiritual transformation of the self into basically the no self, we start to do the work of spiritually helping other people. Now, in the work of helping other people, there's 5 levels of helping other people that we must do as we're going through the journey of spiritual life to really find who we are as a human being, to learn about ourselves, to discover ourselves. So the 5 levels of helping other people. Level 1, volunteering, the good level and helping other people. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment, the great level and helping other people. Level 3, business and entrepreneurships, the highest level. Level 4, faith and spiritual levels and helping other people. Level 5, spiritually helping other people who help other people. It's teaching level and helping. So as we go through a process of going through the self to the no self, go on the journey of spiritual life, the 5 levels of helping other people become very, very important to discover. You can only discover the 5 levels of helping other people once you've gone through a spiritual, psychological, and changing the psyche, because your life is not going to be focused on you anymore. Like I said earlier, the self is the problem because all our suffering, pains, and adversities come from ourselves. So when we go through a spiritual change and a spiritual transformation, there's no more self, and that's the end of suffering, pain, and adversity, and the end of depression, anxiety, and stress. And you live a life more freer, more spiritual, more faithful. So no, stage number 6, selfless. Now, selflessness is basically this: living a life of spiritual contribution to others. Get to the stage of selflessness when you basically helped other people, giving back and made a difference. Helping other people and giving back and making a difference is the most important work you'll do in life. There's no more important work than helping other people, giving back and making a difference. The selflessness comes when you start the work of helping people because you're doing selfless acts towards others. And you're not thinking about yourself, your difficulties, your struggles, and your challenges. Thinking about how can you rebuild lives, how can you change lives, how can you help people in what they're going, how you can support people in what they need help with, and how you can live your spiritual legacy now. So selflessness becomes very, very important. Stage 7 is the no self. So the no self is know thyself. So you know yourself. No self is basically transforming the self into the no self, which basically means no self. There's no more you in life. There's no more my accomplishments, my achievements, my prosperity, my riches. So that all passes away and that dies basically. So the ego dies. You go through a process of ego death. You go through a process of dying to the self, dying to you, me, my, I. So there's no more I, there's no more my, there's no more me, there's no more self. So that's what the no self is all about. You can only get to the no self by going through a spiritual change and going on the journey of spiritual life. And the no self is a life of no more self. There's no more you. There's no more of what you want out of life, what you need out of life, what you want to become out of life. So that all changes. So when you really discover that the no self becomes the most important thing, this changes your life in every single way. It's on the journey of spiritual life. When there's no more self, you're free to make contributions to others, help humanity, help the animals, and help the universe. So that's the no self, which is basically know thyself. You know yourself as a human being, your life experiences, your successes, your failures, your challenges, and your difficulties. Know thyself. So stage 8 is spiritual change. Now this becomes the most important thing. As we're going on the journey of spiritual enlightenment, spiritual change becomes the most important thing. Your life only changes when you go through a spiritual change. If you don't go through a spiritual change, you will live with yourself, suffering, pain, and adversity. So the spiritual change is a transformation of the self. So no more self, no more I, no more me, no more my, and you discover the no self and selfless. This is a spiritual change. We spiritually change, find faith in spirituality, find a relationship with Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. But you must go through a spiritual change before you understand yourself as a human being, which is the journey of spiritual life. Stage 9 is spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. Once you go through a spiritual change, then you find spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. Your life completely changes. Find the freedom of life, the liberation of life. It's the ending of suffering, pain, and adversity, the ending of overthinking, ruminating, negative thinking, the ending of depression, anxiety, stress, the ending of frustration, anger, and fear, which is spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. This becomes so, so important in life. And many people have never got to this point within their life of spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation. This becomes so important that I'm encouraging the listeners and the people that are watching this video. Go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment. Discover the spiritual enlightenment for yourself. Spiritual freedom and spiritual liberation will transform your life in every single way. It's very, very important. Without going through a process of spiritual change, you do not find spiritual enlightenment. So this becomes very, very important. We all must go on this journey. So very important. So stage 10 is then spiritual enlightenment. You reach the place of spiritual enlightenment. Reach the place where you're spiritually free, spiritually liberated, spiritually awakened, and you know that self as a human being, which is the no self and selfless. Your life then becomes a life of spiritual contribution to others. Every day you'll be helping other people, giving back, making a difference, making a contribution. Every day your life will be focused on how many contributions you make, how many people you serve, what difference you make, what impact you have, what significance you have, how you spiritually transformed your life into the self to the no self and live a faithful and spiritual life with Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha. So this becomes very, very, very important. Spiritual enlightenment is the transformation of the self, the self to the no self, the no self and selfless. It's the most important thing to discover. When you discover it, do the 5 levels of helping other people. You go on the process of spiritual change. With spiritual change, you do 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling. So it all connects together. And when you're spiritually enlightened, your life changes. You will not be eating animals. You'll be a vegetarian and a vegan. Your faith and spirituality will change. The way you think will change. The way you behave will change. Your personality will change. Your characteristics will change. And you become spiritually liberated, spiritually free, spiritually awakened. That's the journey of spiritual enlightenment. And then we get to stage 11, which is spiritual truth. A spiritual truth only comes to a person that's gone through spiritual enlightenment. A spiritual enlightenment is when you really understand yourself as a human being. All of your life experiences to the past, the present, to the future. You find the freedom from the known of all of life. Your thoughts and your psychology and your thinking will change. You change yourself in personality, behavior, characteristics, qualities, attributes, and skills and ability. And then you focus your life on the spiritual contributions, the differences into others. So this is when spiritual truth becomes important. When we find spiritual truth, we'll be living for Jesus Christ, Jehovah, Buddha. And our lives will be focused on the spiritual truth, helping people to find Jesus Christ, Jehovah, Buddha in life. This is where life really begins. Your life really begins when you selflessly giving it away towards others. You selflessly give it away towards others and help people in what they're going through. Millions of people are going through suffering, pain, and adversity because they haven't discovered no self and selflessness. So their life is still focused on them. So the spiritual enlightenment, spiritual truth comes to those people who've gone through the journey of spiritual change, spiritual enlightenment. There's 11 steps to the journey. So just to repeat the 11 steps. Stage 1, the self. Stage 2, suffering, pain, and adversity. Stage 3, overcoming suffering, pain, and adversity. Stage 4, spiritual transformation. Stage 5, spiritually helping other people. Stage 6, selflessness. Stage 7, no self. Stage 8, spiritual change. Stage 9, spiritual freedom, spiritual liberation. Stage 10, spiritual enlightenment. Stage 11, spiritual truth. So this is the journey of spiritual enlightenment. This is the journey. You learn about yourself each step along the journey. And I would recommend to the listeners who are watching this video and this content, and I hope it helps as many people as I can by sharing. Go on the journey of spiritual enlightenment. Go on the journey of helping other people, helping the animals, helping the universe. Go on the journey of spiritual change. If you go on the journey of spiritual change, you become a transformed, whole, complete human being, which basically means you'll be living your life different. People are suffering, going through pain, going through adversities because they've never discovered no self, selflessness. They've never discovered how to overcome themselves. So the spiritual enlightenment journey is overcoming self, their self into no self. And no self is no more self, so you're free, you're liberated, you're awakened. into doing the work, helping other people, giving back, making a difference. Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and Buddha want you to go through a spiritual change. They want you to spiritually change. The psyche and psychological mind changes. That changes your whole life. Then your life will be spent in helping other people, helping the animals, helping the universe, and using your life as a service towards others. Selfless acts of service, of kindness, care, compassion, empathy, love towards others. And when you go in the process of spiritual truth, you'll be doing the work of ministry and actually helping Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha within life. And that's the whole process of spiritual enlightenment. And when you find spiritual enlightenment, you find spiritual energy, spiritual love. Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha will give you spiritual energy, spiritual love. You have spiritual energy and spiritual love. This transforms your whole life in every single way. Spiritual energy has no destination, has no resting place. It's completely spiritual. Spiritual love is a connection with nature, humanity, the animals, the universe, every single way. So we must go on the journey of spiritual life. I hope this has helped. It's quite rare that I share videos these days, so I'm actually happy that I've made this video. I hope this has inspired the listeners who have watched it and the viewers who have watched it. And remember, spiritual enlightenment is a journey. Go on the journey. Discover yourself as a human being. Learn about the No Self and Selflessness. Go for a spiritual change within the 5 spiritual practices. And actually do the 5 levels of helping other people to make sure you live a spiritual legacy now. So I hope this has helped. I hope you go through the process of spiritual change. Thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for watching this content. I hope it helps. Goodbye now. Take care now.